Joining us for our next edition of our 49er Industry Chat. We're going to pause as we welcome people into the webinar today. Thank you again for joining. My name is Noemi Guevara, and I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement here at California State University, Long Beach, and we thank you for attending our session today. Before we start, I would like to let you know this session is being recorded and it will live on our website at csuob.edu/alumni. For today's webinar, if you'd like to submit any questions, we encourage you to use our Q&A box located above or below your screen to submit any questions through our chat today. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today. Paul Girard is a double CSUB alum, earning both his bachelor's and master's degrees in political science. Paul has worked on a variety of assignments during his 2+ decades of service to the city of Los Angeles. His experiences in legislative and financial policy development and analysis, auditing, performance management, and budgeting have been pivotal in preparing him for his current work in labor relations. As the chief of the Employee Relations Division for the Office of the City Administrative Officer, he manages complex, sensitive labor relations activities, including negotiating, implementing, administrating, and interpreting labor agreements and other policies governing terms and conditions of employment, and advising elected officials and city management and staff on labor relations strategies and policy development and implementation. Please join us in welcoming today's 49er Industry Chat host, Paul Girard. Thank you, Paul, so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
I usually like to start off from the beginning. Your time at CSUOB. I know you earned your BA and MA from Cal State Long Beach. So if you'd like to share with us, why did you choose Cal State Long Beach for your BA, and what was that experience like?
I was interested in going to a school near where I grew up with great weather and great programs. What actually attracted me about Cal State Long Beach was its music program. I was in band and took private lessons and a lot of musical activities from the 4th grade all the way to the 12th grade. I played saxophone, flute, clarinet, percussion, and I thought, hey, I was going to be a music major, and Cal State Long Beach was absolutely, back in that day and probably still today, absolutely probably the best music school in the area. A lot of reputable musicians were teaching out of Cal State Long Beach and had gone to Cal State Long Beach. I was taking lessons from some of those people. And so I hit the ground and there I was. Until I found out that it would take me 6 years to get through the program. And then I started reevaluating the lifestyle, and I thought, maybe that's not quite where I want to end up. Like, I want to keep music as a hobby and a passion, but not sure that I want to necessarily go down the type of, of path, the demands that put on musicians. So I reevaluated, my options, and my father was a political science major. Graduated from UCLA. We won't hold that against him, but so, and through discussions with him, and so I just started exploring political science and switched majors. I took a lot of political science and history classes. I was at one point on the board of the History Teacher, which is a publication, or was a publication, out of the history department. It was a literature review, and that was exciting. Did some internships while I was at Cal State Long Beach, worked in admissions and records, just tried to, take full advantage of what the campus has to offer. And I particularly participated in tutoring and outreach teaching, Upward Bound program I taught there, and then later when I was doing my master's degree, was a teaching assistant. And after that, headed to UCSB to work on a PhD, where I taught and tried to kind of find an identity in public service and getting back to the community. I thought at one point that I was actually going to be a teacher, but then kind of chose a different path in public service for the city of Los Angeles.
Wonderful. So I know you got your master's a couple years after your bachelor's. Did you work in between, or did you just intern in between your BA and your MA?
I graduated in the summer of '91 and started my master's program in the fall of '91.
Okay.
And worked for the department while I was getting my master's, as I said, as a teaching assistant, and went straight through. So 2 years of work and got out and then headed off to other things.
You know, you often hear about individuals encouraging students, if they want to go in the public sector, to possibly go for an MPA, for an MBA, but you went for your political science degree instead.
Yeah. I thought, because I thought I was interested in university teaching, either 4-year or possibly community college. So got my master's degree in political science with an eye towards furthering that. So I took a little bit of a circuitous route in that, focused on education, like on the education side as opposed to public sector side. But I think things turned out pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. So what was your first position with the city of LA like?
I came from the city of LA directly from working for the appointed Charter Reform Commission. It was one of 2 charter reform commissions that were doing work on reforming the city's charter. And so having worked for that commission, I had a lot of information and experience and knowledge about the process. And I was hired by the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst for the city of Los Angeles to work on charter reform and governmental efficiency issues. That office is the support arm of the city council. It does work exclusively for the city council, all things policy and budget related. It was a great experience. I spent 3 years there. I immersed myself in not only matters of charter reform, governmental efficiency, implementing the new charter, working on things like neighborhood councils. But that was also around the time that Los Angeles experienced one of its most significant police scandals, the Rampart scandal, if you will, where a number of officers were accused and found guilty of wrongdoing. And so I transitioned from the charter and the governmental efficiency work to public safety work, working on implementing aspects of an imposed consent decree on the Los Angeles Police Department. So a significant number of reforms were being implemented at that point, and I was lucky enough to work on those. After about 3 years, I kind of got a little restless and headed off to the mayor's office. I worked for Mayor Hahn, and that was, interestingly, for the public safety group right around June 2021, thinking, hey, this would be great, and go into this. At the time, Chief Bratton, Bill Bratton, came from New York, came to Los Angeles, implemented a new work schedule, and so that was all new and exciting. And then, of course, as many people on this call know, September 11, 2021 came around, and I was in the mayor's office in the public safety group at the center of it. So that morning, shepherded down to the emergency operations center and spent the next few days there, dealing with trying to get the city stable still brings emotions out in me, as you can tell. Sorry.
Yeah, it does. I think we all remember, where we were,
Yeah.
yeah, on that day in 2001. Definitely.
Yeah.
Wow. Um, I have questions coming in. Do you have any internships in local government while you were a student that helped you reaffirm that that was a direction you wanted to go?
I did. When I was working on my master's degree at Cal State Long Beach, I interned for the city of Long Beach, working on education policy. And that helped affirm that I did not want to work on education policy. But it was a great experience nonetheless. It helped me understand how governmental processes work. It gave me an idea. It was short-lived. I think it was a 6-month internship, but it helped me understand, where things worked, where they didn't. And to this day, I reflect on that experience every once in a while and try to, think about how I can do things better.
You talk about interning, that's a great time to kind of research and find out what you like or you don't like without really committing to a long time, or just this is my job now, and what if you're unhappy, that's not what you wanted at the end.
And no truer words. I would encourage students to take advantage of internships, any and all, as many as possible. And as you said, Naomi, get out there and see what's available and see what it's like without a hard commitment. It's a great way to get experience, but also to help yourself understand what your interests are.
Do you see more liberal study degrees in your field or MPAs at this time?
I don't see a lot of MPAs. I see more liberal studies than most other fields. But I will tell you the greatest value I see is the crossovers. The people who, okay, so for instance, I just hired an employee 2 weeks ago. He's a math major. So the question is, what the heck does a math major know about employee relations?
Right.
Well, maybe not much, but this young man has a very logical, keen mind. He's a problem solver. Philosophy is a really good thing to study in school. It helps unravel mysteries and makes sense of complex issues. And if you can get through Plato, you can probably get through anything.
Yes, you definitely
so the
could.
crossover folks are particularly interesting to me in these days. Maybe not, biochemistry in my field, but not too far off. I would not discount anyone who has a logical mind and who can take things step by step and come up with a reasonable solution within the structure of what we're dealing with.
So you're, chief of employee relations for the second largest municipal government in the U.S. with, I think you said, close to 45,000 employees. How do you keep abreast of everything in policies, labor unions, just managing, all the different parts in the hiring process and just people and people's roles?
Well, I think the most important way that I manage is through experience. I've been working for this division for 11 years, and just paying attention every step of the way, and educating myself on even assignments that were not my own. I've typically handled public safety units for the city. but I've also assisted people with civilian units. In this role, there's nothing more important than having a really good team under me. One that I trust, who trusts me, who we communicate, effectively together. And then working closely with other entities in the city, the personnel department, who handles human resource functions, and the city attorney's office. We work closely together to make sure that we have a holistic strategy, one that everyone understands and we're clear on. And then a lot of reading, labor relations journals. Don't get to many conferences these days, but just trying to keep abreast of changes in the law. Fair Labor Standards Act, of course, is very important. And yeah, and then I guess anytime there's an opportunity to read a contract from another city, or even the private sector, and explore new ideas, we're always looking for better ways to do things, and frankly, better ways to structure our employee agreements, which is important. An agreement is not one-sided. You have to make sure that you're attracting people while spending your money wisely. So it's a
Right.
tenuous balance.
Right, definitely. Do you belong to any professional groups or networking groups that you might recommend to our alums and students to look into?
I will soon take the International Management Professional Association degree, the IPMA. Haven't done that, just haven't had time. There are other organizations out there. CalPELRA, I would particularly guide people towards, that has pretty good information, but there are not too many organizations that fit our bill. More of the organizations are like for mediation or arbitration, which is not what we get into very often. But it's so I guess the theme of my career in the city, and kind of holds true here, it's really not so important what I know from the outside, but the value that people have in this organization and other cities, is understanding the culture and the rules, and how we in particular process things. Of course, we have influences, like we have PERB that influences our employee relations board. We have to know about those rules, we have to work within them, but the way in which you go about effectuating those or implementing things is really, that really brings value to employees. So it's rely on more of experience and understanding about the current environment.
I think remembering that you're working with people too, it's
Absolutely, yeah.
first and foremost.
Sure, and everyone has different perspectives, and
Right.
you have to balance those and take them into account. But at the end of the day, be honest and straightforward, and
Right,
communicate as effectively as possible.
definitely. Have a couple questions here. How did you learn to negotiate, especially given all the nuances of labor unions? Do you work closely with legal counsel during the negotiation process?
My process, I would not recommend, and as the chief of this division now, I aim to change that. Third week on the job, was told to take the 110 all the way down to its end, to get off on Harbor and to find Harbor and Fifth, where the headquarters of the port resides. And I walked into a room full of port pilots and their attorney. That negotiation was my first, and lasted for a year and a half. We almost came to impasse over that. Thankfully not. I think the best way to learn is, at least in my division, and this is what I'm implementing for my new people here, is assisting seasoned negotiators, which we have a few here, taking your time, being at the table, hearing, things that go on, doing some of the rudimentary work, preparing actual proposals, doing research, getting involved without being in the hot seat is absolutely my mantra here. And my people know that, and I think respect that. I typically do not take legal counsel with me to the bargaining table. Although unions, some represent themselves, as in the employees who are part of the union will exclusively represent themselves at the table. Others will bring attorneys. We try to the fullest extent possible to stay away from legal issues. And it's perfectly acceptable to say, you know, we're not at liberty to discuss that topic at this time, but if we do confront legal issues, we take them back to our city attorney, which we have a fantastic labor relations division in the city attorney's office, headed by some just ace attorneys. And we discuss any and all matters with them. And then, of course, when we complete negotiations, our contracts go through a review by the city attorney to form and legality. And before we sign off with the unions, we make sure to address as many changes as possible that are recommended by our attorneys.
Wonderful. So you have a team that supports you on the back end.
Yes, of incredibly, just couldn't say enough nice things about our attorneys.
Wonderful. What are some of the challenges you face on the policy side? This is obviously where you see true change, but policy reform can take long and be hard to alter.
Yeah. I think bridging the gap between expectations of the policymakers and the actual steps it takes to implement policies, that's probably the most challenging thing. Elected officials in particular are not always in the know about all the rules that we have to deal with. Yeah. I mean, case in point, you know, the vaccine mandate, which we're dealing with now, and you know, there are some outcomes that are expected, but there are a lot of rules that are in place that govern employment. And so navigating the rules versus meeting the expectations is probably the most challenging thing to see. On the flip side, though, addressing the question specifically, it does take a lot of time, but one thing that I've been quite successful in doing, and I did this with my very first contract, you always, to the extent possible, you should try to take the long view. With a number of groups that I've dealt with over the last decade, I remember going to the table with them and saying, okay, I understand that you want to be equal to the group on the other side of the aisle. That's not going to happen in this round. In fact, it may not happen for a couple contracts. But you know, if we focus on where we want to be ultimately, and then take steps to get us there incrementally, that's achievable. So the short-term view, sure, that's important, but always, to the extent possible, have the long-term view in mind, because that does affect your short-term action. And you can incorporate things that you do today into getting to that long-term. And then just being honest with the groups. I've told a number of groups,
Right.
You know, we have police groups at the airport and the port. And then we have, obviously, LAPD. Those groups, the airport and port, want to be equal to LAPD, and I get that. Not achievable in one contract. So in a number of those that I negotiated, I told them, we're only going to get you 20% of the way there this time. But then the next time is 20%, and the next time is 20%, and so on. 5 contracts, you're home.
Right. Sharing that big picture at the beginning and just being honest, you know, I think people would appreciate, and they're probably their willingness to work with you is there, because you're just being upfront at the beginning.
Yeah, and that kind of goes to my negotiating style, which is I don't hold back on a lot of things. I mean, if I can, if I have authority to go to a certain place, it's usually where I go. Unless there are trades that need to be made, but getting to the end result, it's in everyone's best interest.
Right, definitely. You just mentioned the vaccination mandate. Like, what challenges have you faced in the city to be able to accomplish that?
Well, trying to address all of our labor groups' interests, but keeping a consistent policy has been very challenging. We started out hearing a central message, which was, we don't want anybody to be treated differently. So for instance, don't give one group the ability to not, to opt out, if you will, to test. That's been very challenging because it's not like any other negotiations that you face. When you sit down with an organization, let's say airport police captains, they're speaking for their interests, and they have a particular set of circumstances and challenges that they want to address. Those interests that they have usually are not misaligned with other groups directly. Whereas the vaccine mandate, you have many different groups with many different interests, but those interests are competing. So if you say, for instance, we expect everyone to get vaccinated or have an exemption to the vaccine mandate, some groups will say, well, I only have 3 people in my entire bargaining unit who aren't vaccinated. Can't you make an exception? So then trying to develop the exception, which applies to everybody, but still keeps the goal of a healthy and safe workforce for employees' sake and the public's sake, that presents a challenge. So balancing all of the interests, I think, while being consistent, has been particularly daunting.
Definitely. And we're all still navigating all that, that's new to so many HR departments across the United States.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a learning curve.
Definitely. How large is your current team, and in your role, do you work directly or are you more focused on the management side?
So my current team is woefully small. We are 4 negotiators and myself, and then I have 2 clerical staff who do amazing work every day, and then my newest hire, who is in the training process. So total on the negotiation side, including me, we've got 6 people. Hopefully soon to hire a few more. And yeah, managing everything that we have to do is very, very difficult. We just lost one of our team members who went to become the HR director at the Port of Los Angeles. My division is notorious for training success stories. We've lost, in my time here, we've probably lost 4 or 5 employees to become assistant general managers of departments, 1 to become a general manager, 1 who's now the head of employee relations for the Department of Water and Power, and then a few others who have gone to pretty prominent roles. So it's a great place to learn a lot. The downside is we do a really good job of training people and making them attractive. So
yeah, which is a good thing. I think you always talk about making sure our employees are scaling up and learning your new skills and hopefully moving on to bigger and better things. But You have a small and mighty team. That's what I said. I have a small and mighty team.
We do. My team is, every day I hear about another assignment that I didn't hear about, and I scratch my head, wondering how are they doing it, but they are. And you just have to take it one piece at a time, and it's a constant reprioritization of tasks. We use legal deadlines, policy deadlines, elected official expectations, any financial impacts to constantly reprioritize our workload. And it really is on a daily basis. I'll be in the middle of something and an email comes in, and unfortunately you just have to stop that and move to the next. And some things, some things may fall through the cracks. You just have to do your best to address them as soon as you can.
That's where those time management skills come into play really well.
They do, absolutely.
Going along the lines of you losing people, resignations are at an all-time high right now. What have you learned to be top factors in keeping your workforce satisfied and productive?
Telecommute is one of the strongest tools that we have. We are under an emergency telecommute policy now, but look forward to formalizing that hopefully one day in a telecommute policy that would allow people a little flexibility. Also, proper training, as I mentioned earlier, managing expectations in the context of the environment that we're in, understanding that people have, family situations that they're dealing with, and other commitments that could cause a lot of stress. So just making sure that, I'm sensitive to those needs. As you said, we're dealing with people, and, these people, my people, they do have commitments at work, but one thing I always like to remind them, because, I've dealt with public safety for so long, is that the mistakes they make probably don't cost lives. No one's getting shot at in my outfit. So if someone makes a mistake, if there's typo, if there's a transposed number, it's fixable. Just having forgiveness and trying to show people that, yeah, you're going to make mistakes, but you're going to learn from them, and then you'll move on, and you'll not make those mistakes again, but you will make other mistakes. And it's just a constant learning environment that we're in. So just being supportive and encouraging.
Right. And that shows to your leadership, that you're training people to up their skills and not be that like reprimanding boss, that's pointing out all the mistakes to you all the time. And I think that's what people appreciate in a leader.
Well, and I'm reminded about, treat others as you want to be treated. So,
right.
And in that vein, I wish I had different experiences getting to where I am today. And so I always reflect on that, and, and try not to have those same experiences repeated, but to have better experiences for the people who are coming behind me.
So I imagine you have tons of meetings every day. What does a typical day look like for you?
Oh, there really is no typical day. If I guess in one sense, I am lucky if I have a lot of meetings on my calendar, because then it's a little more predictable. Because I'll tell you, for instance, yesterday I had, when the day started, there were 2 meetings on my calendar. I was on the phone early, and by the time the first meeting started at 10:30, I had 2 more meetings after the one that was supposed to end at 12. And so, it's because I'm thinking of ahead. I'm thinking the next week when we have a pretty significant meeting that we've got to prepare for, and what items do we have to figure out, and where are the holes. So I've got to coordinate with people to get that information. And then in the meantime, emails are pouring in, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get that done, and I'm assigning things to people and approving things, and it's managed chaos, I think, at best. But I'll tell you, I wouldn't have it any other way. It really does, for my mind and for my style. I really do enjoy the diversity of things that come across my desk, and at least in our labor relations focused employee relations division here, we deal with math, English, psychology, law, logic, any and everything you can imagine. Not only that, but we have to understand what plumbers do and what wastewater treatment operators do, refuse collection truck operators and police officers and librarians. So it's
you too, right? You oversee the zoo people as well.
The who?
The zoo. Are they considered?
We have a zoo. Yeah, we have a zoo here. We have animal keepers and directors of education and veterinarians. And and so in the employee relations division, when someone comes and says, hey, we want to negotiate a bonus for a veterinarian. Well, the first question is, okay, why? What do they do? How do they do it? Why is this important? Why? What would this do for you? What would it do for them? What's the need? And so, one of the things that I love to say is there's nothing like a field trip. So you go out and you meet the vets and you see how they do things and what they do and why it's important to address that and what change it would effectuate. And so it's it's a really interesting gig.
Yeah, because you have so many different unique departments, to learn about every day.
We do. 45,000 employees, roughly, as you said, and about 1,600 classifications.
Wow, that's a lot. What is the biggest challenge and reward of your work, the work you do? What has inspired you to stay with the city of Los Angeles for over 20 years?
I think the most rewarding part is helping people get a better understanding about the environment they work in and how they can manage their careers in the city, how they can manage their personal situations in their professional endeavors. I really enjoy trying to educate people and help people understand kind of the things that are nuanced. Even if it doesn't work out so well, I was talking to a retired clerk yesterday who was convinced that we were shortchanging her on her overtime. Okay, so half hour of my life that that was hers, and just trying to help her understand all the rules, and she promised to come back with more questions. But okay, that's fine. That's what I get paid for. What has inspired me to work for the city for as long as I have? I enjoy the diversity of assignments that I have had the privilege of working in. I've done financial work. I've done policy work. I've audited GAGAS compliant audits. Done personnel work at the executive level, at the at the entry level, everywhere in between. And then the flexibility that the city offers, that government offers, great benefits, holidays. Before I took over this division, weekends off, not so much anymore, but it's okay.
Are you on call then sometimes?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure
we're always on call.
Yeah. But, I hope my family would agree. I try and manage that the best I can. I don't take them for granted. But I try to balance that, and this time is atypical.
Right.
We usually are not as busy as we are, but just balancing things, keeping the perspective. But yeah, and the people here are great to work with. I think city employees in general have a pretty good perspective. And yeah, like I said, the environment and the opportunities that you can find in the city are pretty special. You can come in, well, like me, in working for the chief legislative analyst, but I've worked for the mayor's office, the controller, the personnel department, the city attorney, actually two mayors. So just all over the place, and and kind of experiencing a bunch of different things.
Yeah. What advice do you have for someone, an alum or students that would like to grow and advance in their company like you have with the city of LA?
I would say advertise yourself and your interests, because you never know where an opportunity will come up. So case in point, so I went to UCSB to work on a PhD and got to a point where I just figured out it wasn't for me anymore. Unfortunately, that point was I passed all my exams, but I didn't write the dissertation. But in particular, I didn't do that because I couldn't find anyone to sponsor me in an area that I really wanted to write about. So as I said earlier, I went to work for the Charter Reform Commission, and then I came to the city of Los Angeles. While I was in the chief legislative analyst's office, people knew my background and they knew what I was interested in and would chat people up. My father actually worked for the chief legislative analyst office as well. He was an assistant to the director. I was at the lowest level. The city archivist called us one day and said, hey, we're writing a historiography about the city of Los Angeles, 1850 to 2000. The person who signed up for the chapter on the administrative process just dropped out. I know that you, me, were in school. This was kind of your thing. And then my dad, and she said, hey, you guys want to write the chapter? Sure.
Yes.
No problem. So using almost exclusively archived materials, we wrote 150 type pages about the administrative process of the history of the city of Los Angeles from 1850 to 2000. So it's, how did that relate to my job at the time? It didn't. But, I came.
You raised your hand and you were willing to do the work,
Exactly.
or learn.
And kind of in that respect, I did get to write my dissertation.
Yeah.
And that led to other things. And she said, oh, well, I have these people I want you to meet. And then so that I kind of at that point, right around that time, a little soon thereafter, talked to other people in other departments. The mayor's office called, hey, we want you to work on secession because we knew you were involved in charter reform, which led to public safety, which led to the controller's office. I worked for the controller at the time back in 2002-ish as her deputy. And, I was just never afraid to explore an opportunity. Conversations are free.
Right.
If someone says, I have an interesting position, go talk to them, go hear them out, find out what it's about. You may be surprised. It may not be up your alley.
Right.
There may be an aspect there that you can parlay that you would learn something and they would get benefit from you. And,
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard about informational interviews where you just go and hear about what they do. You're not, there for a job interview, just informational. And like you said, it doesn't hurt to ask. You're just, gathering information.
And even formal interviews, I would suggest. So we have a clerk here. She's a administrative clerk. and she is on the list for senior administrative clerk. She does not want to leave our division, but she has an opportunity to interview with the retirement system. I told her, I'm not trying to get rid of you. Go interview. Go find out what they're about. Go see what they're telling you. Go see what they have to offer. You can always come back. I would never turn her away, but I also want her to grow and to get any experience and opportunity possible. So even things like that, it only is going to cost you your time. And that, time is precious, but you'll learn something, or at least you'll learn what you don't want to do. Which is
Yes,
also important.
it is also important. So you don't, waste time, or, really narrow in into what you're passionate about. I think
Right.
we all do what we do every day because we're passionate about our work, and it just makes our day go by quicker and we're happier.
Yeah, and passions, keep an open mind about things is the other advice I would give. Because you never know what, you don't know what you don't know. And if you keep an open mind about something, you go and you talk to somebody and they say, well, this is what it entails. You might find that you have an interest in it. And even if you don't do that for the rest of your life, like me, I've bounced around, with the exception of this stint that I've been here, I was in a number of different roles and departments, and just always trying to learn things and kind of piece together my interests to finally end up here, which, I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. So I know we're up against time at this time, and I have two more questions that came in through the queue. But how has technology and artificial intelligence affected employee relations and the evolution of work that traditionally takes place in person? Have you seen resistance, or has it been a smooth transition to a remote hybrid work?
The technology part of it, I have not seen a lot of resistance. Most groups embrace remote meetings. There are one or two groups who are insistent about meeting in person. They just feel more comfortable that way, and I respect that. But for the most part, technology has been very kind. We're all on camera, or at least the people who are talking, so you see facial expressions. There's not a lot lost in that. Technology has facilitated our work immensely. We continue to computerize, and in some cases automate our processes, reduces error, which is very significant in our line of work. Artificial intelligence is an interesting topic. It has come up a number of times. I know there are tools out there that will evaluate text and summarize things. I'm gonna say I'm not a fan of that. I'm a firm believer in there's nothing like looking at the actual text of the document itself, because there are nuances in there that I have gone up against artificial intelligence in some, a few times, and there are nuanced, provisions that have certain meanings. The other part about that is that where there's the written word, no agreement is ever perfect, and the imperfection about that is the intent behind the written word. Oftentimes we don't capture the full extent of the intent. And so if you rely on going back on notes or testimony from the negotiators to really give the full context of the provisions that you're talking about. So I still would contend that there's nothing like the real person,
Right.
breathing flesh and blood. Maybe that's self-interest, but that's what I'm going to stick with.
Yeah, I like that. I have one more question from someone saying, thank you for doing this. Thank you for taking your time and doing this panel. It's much appreciated. They currently work for DPSS in LA County, and this is their first full-time job there as well as their first year in county. As someone that wants to explore the departments in LA County, what is the best way to network and meet new professionals across other departments?
I'm a little bit out of my element with the county because we're the city, so those are two separate entities. What I would suggest is, well, first I would talk to colleagues and find out what work they're engaged in. I would also talk to the people who I serve. So for instance, when I was in the Chief Legislative Analyst's office or the Mayor's office, or even this office, I would just talk about the work that other people are doing, even if it didn't relate to my own. Not only with my colleagues here, but the people who I interact with in other departments, to find out how they got there, where their interests lie. Just go to lunch with them, or I guess have a virtual lunch with them in these days.
Right.
And just, chat it up and figure out where people come from or where they have an interest in going. Again, keeping that open mind and just talking to as many people as possible, figuring out, the variety of experiences, because there is no one, especially in the public sector, there is no, by any means, singular path to success. The great thing I think about the public sector is that there are a number of jobs in certain career ladders that you can go into that you would never have expected to go into. So if you start out as a chemist, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to end up that way. Yeah, so just talking to different people in the city, in the county, in your department or other departments, and asking them about how they got there and their experiences, I think would be a good start.
Oh, wonderful. So I know we're up against time. Any final words of wisdom you'd like to leave our fellow students and alumni with before we log off?
Don't be shy about exploring new things. As I've said many times today, is keep an open mind, and even if you aren't sure about whether an opportunity would be of interest, just take a few minutes and explore it and see what there is. I never thought I would do half the things I did for the city. Work on the comprehensive annual financial report. Before I knew what that was, I could barely spell CAFR. But after doing it, and it took me down other avenues, and it got me a baseline of education that I was able to build on. So any and all experiences are relevant. It just depends on how relevant you make them. And
right.
Yeah, anything that you can learn, you can turn into something that will get you where you want to go.
Yeah, like a previous supervisor of mine was like, be like a sponge and try to absorb everything you can, during that first year, because you never know.
And not only the first year, how about the 23rd year?
Yes.
Never take it for granted. There's always something new to learn.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul, so much for your time. We're very thankful for your time, and congratulations on what a successful career you have with the city of LA. And if anyone wants to get in contact with Paul, please email us at alumni@csuob.edu, and we will be happy to introduce you to Paul via email. Everyone, thank you for attending, and please follow us on social media to learn about our future chats or visit our website. We thank you for attending.
Thanks.
All of you can just give